On a gray evening, a trial is taking place. A beautiful woman with black hair named Veronica Hillsteel is declared guilty of the crime of treason. Her sentence? Death! Murmurs echo through the room as the sentence is announced. Ignoring them, the judge looks at Veronica and asks for her last words. Tearfully, she responds with a question. Is loving a sin now? Is it a sin to love the prince? The murmurs in the room turn into outraged remarks after hearing that. Even at the end, she's still shameless. I heard the count is in shock that his only daughter turned out like this. After hearing such nonsense, the judge orders Veronica to be taken away. Before being dragged out, she looks at the prince with tears in her eyes and wishes him happiness. The prince, who had been watching everything from a distance, just looks at her uncomfortably without saying a word. The guards grab her by the arms and escort her out. As she passes through the doors of the courtroom, we see Veronica's expression change. From an innocent, tearful look to a confident and cunning gaze. She is thrown into the prisoner carriage, where someone is waiting for her. Confidently, she fixes her hair and asks the gray-haired man if her performance was satisfactory. The man answers seriously that the performance was perfect. She extends her hand toward the man, waiting for her payment and saying, "Then I guess with that my contract is over, isn't it, Daddy? Or rather, Count." It is at this moment we discover that this woman is our protagonist. But she is not Veronica because Veronica doesn't even exist. Her real name is Lacy, a woman born into an extremely poor family, not even knowing who her father was, living in misery with only her mother. At the age of 10, to pay off her mother's debts, she was sold to a secret agency known as Fiore. Despite being extremely beautiful, Lacy begged the agency's owner to give her a job where her beauty wasn't the only thing that mattered. And so Lacy became an actress. But her stage was the streets, life itself, after all. It was an agency of con artists. A passerby who witnesses a crime, a bastard daughter of a newlywed nobleman, a marquis's maid. It didn't matter the role. She had to give her best. And Lacy was damn good at what she did. One of the best in her agency, she played her roles flawlessly for years. Then one day, a highly unusual job proposal appeared. No revenge, no scams. The request was to play the adopted daughter of a count. For years. Though strange, the offer was extremely tempting, since the amount to be paid was enough for Lacy to retire from acting and finally be free. To be herself and stop pretending to be someone else for her client's gain. An opportunity like that doesn't come around every day, and Lacy knew it. So she accepted the role. For 6 years, Lacy became Veronica, the daughter of Count Hillsteel. Her role was clear. Help the first prince become the best candidate for the throne. Ensure that the noble lady chosen by the count would become the prince's fiancée, and then disappear. As if Veronica had never existed. First, she had to be recognized by Weldon society as a noble lady pure and kind enough to catch the prince's attention, and also to help raise his moral standing with the public. Using the excuse of fragile health, Veronica had a late debut. But it was spectacular enough to impress everyone, especially the prince, who became enchanted by her. Everything was going according to plan. At the right time, the angelic lady chosen by the count entered the scene to compete for the prince's love and attention. And Veronica, out of jealousy, would try to poison her. Her plan would fail, and even though she was a count's daughter, she would be severely punished for endangering the prince's life out of blind jealousy. The perfect excuse for her to exit the stage while the real chosen one, now seen as unjustly wronged by the cruel Veronica, would marry the prince. Everything happened as planned. Or at least, that's what Lacy believed. But upon returning to the agency, she was informed by her boss that the count had betrayed her, and now she was a wanted criminal throughout the kingdom. In disbelief, holding her wanted poster, Lacy explains everything to her boss, saying there's no way she could have done anything wrong to justify the count's actions. As instructed, she had become the showcase that highlighted the prince's qualities. And when he was at his peak, she passed the role of consort to the woman chosen by the count and disappeared from everyone's sight and memory. Ta-da! A happy ending for everyone. Lacy says cheerfully, proud of her work. This way, the count would save his reputation through the prince's fiancée and have someone he chose himself by the prince's side, while I, with the pile of money I received, would pay off my debts and move to a place where no one knows Veronica exists and live the life of my dreams. Lacy snaps back to reality, furious. I worked like a damn slave for 6 years, did everything the count planned perfectly, and now I'm being hunted for 10,000? What the hell is that bastard count thinking? Calmly, while smoking a pipe, the agency boss tells her that maybe because she did the job so perfectly, the count got anxious about leaving a loose end out there. Seeing how calm her boss is, Lacy explodes in rage. How can you just sit there and do nothing? That damn count is doing all this just to avoid paying me. The boss sighs and reveals that actually, the Count offered her 20,000 gold coins to turn Lacy over to him. She should be grateful the boss didn't take the offer. Instead, she created an escape route for Lacy. After all, as annoying as the situation is, she needs to stay alive. One day, I'll make you pay for all this mess you caused. But for now, I want you to survive, because I actually kinda like you. The boss explains the escape plan to Lacy. She must head to the port right now and board a ship to get away. Using a magic earring that helps her change her appearance, Lacy runs off into the night toward the port. Her former agency colleagues pursue her, trying to catch her. They're fake friends who heard about the fat reward the Count is offering, and now they want the money. This only pisses Lacy off more. Damn people in this company who turn on you the moment they get the chance. Damn Count Hillsdale who dared to use her for years and then tossed her aside like trash. Lacy finally reaches the end of the dock, her ex-colleagues still chasing her and shouting vile things. Cornered and hearing their voices and footsteps drawing nearer, Lacy can't hold back her tears. My freedom. I worked so hard to reach it, I came so close. I can't end like this. Heavy rain begins to pour, followed by thunder. The pursuers finally get close enough to the end of the dock to hear a loud slash. They rush to the edge, looking for Lacy. I can't believe the damn girl threw herself into the sea in these conditions. There's no way we'll even find her body now. Frustrated, the men begin to walk away, convinced that Lacy will probably die at sea, and their 10,000 gold coin ticket is gone. At that moment, we see Lacy clinging to the outer side of a nearby ship, hidden. She had to lose all her belongings. She threw them into the sea to make the scene believable. But at least those money-hungry lunatics seem to have given up, believing she desperately threw herself into the ocean. Lacy begins to climb the side of the ship to reach its deck. Even though she's a bit early, maybe she got lucky and this is the ship the boss told her to use to escape. So, as long as no one finds out who she really is, she should be safe, Lacy thinks as she climbs. But as she reaches the top, she comes face to face with a guard wearing strange clothes. Both are startled and Lacy bolts into the ship. Quick, search every corner. We have to find her. Shout the men in a strange language as they search the interior of the ship for the intruder. Lacy, hiding in one of the rooms, watches them through a small crack in the door, hoping they won't come in her direction. But to her misfortune, she hears footsteps heading that way. Scared, she instinctively starts stepping back from the door, only to bump into something. Or rather, someone. Are you a thief? A deep male voice says behind Lacy, making her jump in fright. A strong man with tanned skin, short blonde hair, and a bare chest, wearing clothing clearly from another continent, stands behind her. He gently touches her hair and says, or maybe, you're just a stowaway? Surprised, Lacy turns toward the voice, and upon seeing the man, she recognizes him. We're transported into Lacy's memories, back to 2 years ago at the Hillsteel mansion. The Count informs Veronica that a delegation from the Empire of Arena is about to arrive in the city, and he expects that she has prepared herself in the best possible way to receive them. He emphasizes that she must pay extra attention to Prince Haled, the commander of the delegation. Veronica tells him that he's worrying too much, because she is the perfect daughter, and already has everything prepared. She knows how much of a perfectionist he is, so she assures him that everything will go well. But the Count still seems concerned. He begins to explain that having a good relationship with Prince Haled is important but is interrupted by his daughter. Because that way you can purchase items from the West more easily. And someone like you, who runs one of the best trading companies in Weldon, couldn't afford to miss that opportunity. The Count comments on how clever and shrewd his daughter is, but even so, she must not underestimate Prince Haled. That very day, at the evening ball to welcome the delegation, everyone gossips in awe at how wealthy the Empire of Arena seems to be, and how they flaunt it, having brought many jewels and precious stones. On top of all that, the prince is a strikingly handsome man with a commanding presence. He can impress and control an entire room with just a look. Lacy, who is also at the ball as Veronica, remains confident despite the rumors, believing she will charm Haled. She looks at him from behind her fan like a predator eyeing her helpless prey. At that moment, Haled, who had just entered the room, approaches her and says, "You look like a dog begging for attention." We return to the present with Lacy in disbelief that Haled is standing right in front of her. Haled recognizes her within seconds and greets her with slight sarcasm. "Veronica, it's been a while since I've seen you." Lacy tries to deceive him, saying he must be mistaken and has confused her with someone else. But Haled is confident she's Veronica and wants to know what she's doing on his ship. Wait, this ship belongs to the Empire of Arena? Did I board the wrong ship? But that's impossible. Lacy thinks, shocked by the situation she's gotten into. Haled presses her for an answer, stepping even closer and asking if she's not going to respond. The guards outside are getting closer to the room where the two are. Thinking quickly, Lacy tries to lightly scratch Haled's neck to stun him with the poison hidden beneath her nails. But Haled is sharp and stops her. Realizing that Haled might know about the poison, Lacy makes a desperate decision. She throws herself at Haled and presses her lips against his, kissing him. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a kiss between the protagonists already in Chapter 3. Haled returns Lacy's advances, the two get into a heated makeout session and end up falling onto the bed. When the guards, along with Simon, the prince's aide, enter the room, they're embarrassed to interrupt such a steamy scene. Meanwhile, all Lacy can think is how well Haled kisses. The men quickly leave the room. Outside, one of the guards asks Simon if they should prepare to depart. Simon replies that if the patrol guard is sure he saw a mutant, then they must leave as soon as possible. A mutant had never been seen in Weldon before, so Simon needs to report this to His Highness. But he can't help but be excited by what he just witnessed in that room. Has a consort princess finally been chosen? While Simon is caught up in excitement over the events, Haled exits the room. He informs Simon that they should stop the search on the ship because everything is under control, and they should prepare to set sail as soon as possible. After that, he returns to the room. He finds Lacy looking like a cornered animal, sitting and staring at Haled. You should see your face in a mirror. You look like someone who was just taken advantage of. If someone saw you now, they'd never believe that you were the one who attacked me, Haled says with a smile on his face. Lacy's mind is racing. Haled Serum Hartman, Prince of the Empire of Arena, currently visiting the Kingdom of Weldon for trade reasons. I can't do anything against him, especially in this situation. Maybe appealing to his sympathy is the best option. The actress Lacy takes the stage. Her eyes begin to fill with tears as she tells in a sorrowful tone how she accidentally boarded the wrong ship. Haled isn't fooled. He coldly asks if that's the best excuse she could come up with. He reveals that believing her right after she tried to attack him is difficult. Could she be sure she's not just a wanted criminal? As he says this, he extends the wanted poster toward Lacy. Spare me your made-up sob story, Veronica Hillsteel. We know each other very well, don't we? Our first meeting was hard to forget. We're transported once more to the past, into Lacy's memories, to the moment she and Haled first met at that banquet. She remembers the ridiculous comparison Haled made, calling her a begging dog. She was so furious she ended up slipping out of character and snapped back at him after he kept prodding, using his status as a foreigner and his lack of fluency in the kingdom's language as an excuse. She confronted him, saying his language skills seemed perfectly fine, unlike his ability to read people, which clearly needed improvement. The first Prince of Weldon, noticing the tension between Veronica and Haled, approached trying to defuse the situation, but with no success. Veronica and Haled kept glaring at each other with hatred and exchanging veiled insults. But luckily, the angelic future bride of the first prince managed to calm the atmosphere, and thanks to her, the two princes reached an agreement. To Lacy's surprise, the Count was pleased with her hostility toward Haled and ordered her to keep acting that way, so that her antagonism would make him more inclined to be friendly with the angelic bride. And like a good actress, Lacy gave her best performance, insulting Haled in every way, calling him a barbarian, savage, primitive, and so on. We return to the present. Haled is still waiting for an explanation from Lacy. He leans toward her and starts destroying the magical earring on her ear, revealing her true appearance. Lacy feels a wave of frustration. Magical items are rare and hard to use, and if not for that, she could have pulled off this performance without using her real face. But sadly, that wasn't an option. It's her first time being unmasked like this, and it makes her feel insecure, vulnerable. How does this man know everything? Why can he see so clearly who I really am? Haled asks her once more, "What are you? A fugitive? A criminal? A thief? Answer me honestly this time." Lacy answers his question with another question. "What do you think I am?" Knowing you and knowing how loyal you were to Daniel Le Penwatherline, the first Prince of Weldon, he probably forced you into some kind of plan. I know you'd go to hell for that man. Would you really be willing to be exiled across the ocean for him? Haled asks, his face moving closer to Lacy's. At that moment, Lacy realizes the prince doesn't know everything. That gives her confidence, and she says, "I think you're a little mistaken. Every one of my actions has always been my own choice. A thief, a loyal servant, an infamous femme fatale. What role would you like me to play? For the right price, if it interests me, I can play whatever part you want. So you're telling me it was all just acting?" That mad passion for the first prince, All of it was just a performance to please a client who hired you? Haled concludes. And you did all of that for money? Seems like you finally understood everything, Prince Haled? Lacy confirms. There's a place east of Arena called Surayev. It's a beautiful city surrounded by desert, extremely wealthy. There's a house there with rooms full of gold, silver, rubies, and sapphires. You could choose any room you wanted, as long as you were willing to play the role of my fiancé this time. Haled looks tenderly at Lacy as he says this. He gently touches her chin and makes her look directly into his eyes. I'm excited to see your performance. As my fiancé, the one I fell in love with at first sight. He then starts teasing her again. Or do you prefer the role of a stowaway? That would be a shame, because I really enjoyed what you did earlier. Haled begins to reenact what they did before. If I'm not mistaken, you put your arms around my neck like this, and then came close to me and we kissed, didn't we? Haled leans closer to Lacy's face, his lips brushing against hers. She feels her heart race and her cheeks flush. All right, I'll accept the role, Lacy replies, turning her face away. Satisfied with her answer, Haled gently kisses her hand, informing her that with this answer, they will set sail immediately. The ship's crew is all stirred up, preparing to depart, when we see a man with wine-colored hair and brown eyes gazing sadly at the city gradually being left behind as the ship moves away from the port. Simon approaches him, seeming to understand what's on his mind. It may seem abrupt, but now that Prince Haled has found the bride he was looking for, there's no reason to delay the return to Arena. The man gives a nostalgic smile and sadly agrees with Simon. It makes sense to leave. After all, they've accomplished what they came for. Simon seems concerned about how the man is feeling, and it's a pity they have to leave without finding the lost relative he was searching for. But the man reassures him, saying it's all right. That relative probably isn't in Weldon, as all their searches were in vain. But more important than that, he's excited about the news that the prince has finally found a consort princess. Simon cheerfully agrees with him and informs him that he has good news. They recently managed to capture a spy who had likely been operating since they left Arena. But it seems she got impatient and tried to seduce Prince Haled, which led to her being caught. The man is shocked to hear that. The spy chose the worst possible way to approach the prince, since he has no patience for women like that. And so she was easily captured. The next day, the ship is already sailing, and meanwhile, Lacy is being spoiled with a banquet, which surprises her. She hasn't even signed the contract yet and is already being treated like this with such delicious food. But she can't let herself get distracted by those delights. Something's off. Why did the ship set sail the moment she boarded? It's almost like it was planned. Isn't it unusual for a delegation to leave without notifying the kingdom they were visiting? Couldn't that cause a diplomatic issue? And Haled's behavior is strange. Things got resolved too easily. Nothing in this life is that easy. Lacy is deep in thought when Haled enters the room, asking if the food is to her liking. She replies that the food is indeed delicious, but she would love his company since she needs to align some matters. As soon as Haled sits down, Lacy goes straight to the point. She wants to know what kind of scheme he's planning. Since she'll be directly involved, she needs to know the details before signing anything. Haled calmly replies that there is no scheme, but indeed, he was hiding something from her. At that moment, he looks into her eyes and mentally affirms that his objective was her, from the very beginning. Lacy asks what he was hiding, but Haled simply responds that he hadn't planned to leave Weldon so soon. But since what he wanted came to him willingly, there was no reason to stay. Haled's words irritate Lacy, who questions his intentions. So from the beginning, he planned to hire an actress from the agency? Haled seems confused, clearly not understanding what she's talking about. But Lacy keeps talking, convinced she's figured out his entire scheme. The way he acted with her when they met, how he analyzed her, it was all a test to see if she was skilled enough. She's sure his true goal was to hire the actress who played Veronica. That's how he knew everything. The poison beneath her nails and the magical item she received from Madame, her boss at the agency. Remembering the magical item, Lacy feels a pang of sadness. The earring was a gift from Madame, and being such a rare item, she believed it was a secret only the two of them shared, something that connected them. That makes her feel betrayed by Madame, like she'd been sold. Haled must have spoken to Madame, who advertised Lacy's services to sell her off. After the job with the Count, she'd have no more use for Lacy and Weldon. Resentful about what she's just concluded, Lacy asks Haled, how much did she cost him? Haled, still not fully understanding what she's talking about, replies that he offered the most he could. Lacy recalls the events of the night, and in her mind, everything clicks into place. Even though she arrived at the port earlier than planned, the agency men were already there waiting for her, and even with the disguise, they knew who she was. She thought they only wanted the money, but apparently, all of this was part of Madame's plan to make sure she boarded the right ship without questioning anything. Haled, confused about what's happening and not understanding Lacy's reaction, tries to say something, commenting that the situation seems to have gotten a bit awkward. Lacy, irritated, replies, "Awkward? I'd call this being deceived and blackmailed into accepting a job." Haled asks if they're even talking about the same thing, because clearly he doesn't understand any of it. But Lacy has already made up her mind. She believes Haled is just too embarrassed to admit everything, and worse, he's underestimating her. My God, the protagonist is getting ahead of herself. Lacy girl, it's clearly a big misunderstanding and you two are not talking about the same thing. I wish he'd stop assuming things out of nowhere. Lacy stands up and walks to Haled, and then she kisses him. Haled seems surprised at first, but soon gives in to Lacy's charms. He returns the kiss passionately. The kiss is intense. Hot? Good. Lacy is certain that Haled desires her, that he's attracted to her. Lacy's heart races, but she tries to stay focused. She still feels betrayed by how everything unfolded. So if he's using her, then she'll use him too, Lacy concludes. After the intense kiss, Lacy, confident that she won't be swayed by emotion, asks Haled for the contract so she can sign it. Haled looks confused and asks about the contract, but Lacy quickly responds, "Of course, a contract. After all, you hired me, and formalizing things is part of the process." Later that same day, Haled is taking a bath and talking with Simon. Haled tells him a bit about what happened earlier, and Simon is extremely alarmed by what he hears. "A contract? But Your Highness, being a consort princess is not a temporary position. She will be responsible for many things in Arena, and will have to stay by your side. What will happen when the contract ends? Will you just let her leave?" says Simon El-Saka, commander of the ship and Prince Haled's right hand. Haled, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, tells Simon that he doesn't intend to let her go, and he didn't even want to sign a contract. But he ended up going along with what she was saying, and things just turned out that way. Sure. You went along with her lips glued to yours? Hee. Haled explains that from what he could understand, she's apparently a professional actress, and is willing to play any role as long as she gets paid for it, and that Veronica Hillsteel was one of her main parts. Simon, still shocked, says it's a curious story. But how did he end up signing a contract? Haled simply replies that he didn't quite understand what she was thinking, but decided to accept her offer, since it aligned with what he wanted. But that was very reckless, my prince. You're going to have to tell her the truth at some point and clear up this misunderstanding, replies Simon, still stunned after everything he heard. Haled agrees with him. Things definitely need to be clarified. And since Simon is so smart, why doesn't he come up with a solution for the problem? Due to the ban, it's impossible for Haled to bring up the subject himself. How is he supposed to tell her that, in fact, they met 10 years ago and made a promise to each other? Meanwhile, Lacy is in her room, wondering if she made the right choice. Now that she's calmer, she can think more clearly. The Empire of Arena is so far away, and crossing the ocean is always dangerous. But maybe all of this is for the best. At least in Arena, no one from Weldon will find her. As Lacy reflects on her recent choices, we're transported to Weldon, where we see the first prince, furious about Veronica's disappearance, ordering the guards to search everywhere. Count Hillsdale, angry, saying her actions were unforgivable, disappearing without his permission. Madame in the agency's office, telling a potential client that at the moment the agency isn't accepting new requests. She uses an earring to change her appearance, and in the same room, in the shadows, we see a mysterious man observing her. Back to Lacy. She wonders about such a specific role as fiancée, and as she looks at the bed, she remembers the earlier heated moments and blushes. Why is he so desperate to marry someone anyway? Haled and Simon are still discussing how to tell Lacy everything. Simon suggests the prince tell her the truth in 3 days, as that's how long it takes for the ship to reach international waters. And then the ban will no longer be enforced, and he can explain that it was all a misunderstanding. But Haled argues that she doesn't even remember him. If he brings up something from 10 years ago, she'll think he dug into her past before hiring her, and that would make her hate him. Simon is worried. But my prince, if you don't tell her the truth and the contract ends, she'll want to leave. Confident, Haled says he's come to the most obvious solution. He'll seduce her. That way, she'll have no choice and will want to stay of her own will even after the contract ends. Simon seems unable to believe what he's hearing. But Haled is seriously focused, thinking about how to win her heart. Giving in, Simon then asks how he plans to seduce her. Haled turns to Simon and says that the plan is his job. Simon will have to come up with the plan, and Haled will just execute it. Apologetically, Simon explains that he's not very experienced in that area. He also notes that he's never seen his lord so anxious and insecure about anything. Simon's thoughts are confirmed when Haled asks if he should wear clothes or be naked in front of Lacy, since she seems to like bold men. Simon accidentally spits out the water he just drank, shocked by what the prince said. He warns that if the prince does that, he might scare the consort princess. Haled asks seriously, "Do you really think so? She'd be afraid of me?" Simon replies, "Maybe yes, Your Highness." "You think? You shouldn't give advice if you're not sure about something. And another thing, stop shouting in my ear and dismissing my ideas. If the intention is to seduce and provoke her, then I should do something about my clothing. Stop judging me and do your job, Simon. Help me come up with a plan." Haled, with a certain compassion in his eyes, points out that she seems to have been through a lot. He wishes he could erase her past. Simon warns Haled that clinging to the past is useless. The important thing is to focus on the future. Haled agrees with him, stating that even if she doesn't remember the promise they made in the past, he still will never let her go. He's in no rush and can wait. He wants to give her everything and make her happy. In the ship's dungeon, the spy prisoner somehow seems able to hear Haled and Simon's conversation. She laughs wickedly, declaring she'll use his love for Lacy like a knife to pierce Haled's lonely heart. Lacy, who had dozed off in her room, wakes up startled from a dream. Upon waking, she realizes someone is knocking on her door. She first thinks it's Haled and gets annoyed that he's knocking. But when she opens it, she finds one of the guards, the same one who was thoughtfully speaking with Simon when they left Weldon. The guard explains that Haled ordered him to protect the consort princess while he was bathing. Lacy sees this as a good opportunity to learn more about the Empire of Arena and starts bombarding the guard with every type of question. She asks mainly about Arena's noble society and its customs and etiquette, as if she's studying to play her role as best as possible. Unfortunately, the guard doesn't seem to know much beyond the basics, which frustrates our protagonist a bit. Later that same day, Haled returns from his bath and finds Lacy sitting with the contract in her hands. It looks like she was waiting for him to return. But to his dismay, she's not waiting for the reasons he'd hoped. She informs him that he needs to read the terms she added and sign. Haled, disappointed that she showed no reaction at all to seeing him practically half-naked and freshly bathed, begins reading the contract aloud. First, the contractor shall perform, at the client's request, the role of a foreign fiancée with whom he fell in love at first sight. Second, the client must protect the contractor's identity so the Kingdom of Weldon does not discover her. Third, the client must provide the actress with all the information she needs, along with financial and psychological support. Fourth, the client must pay the equivalent of 10,000 Weldon gold coins once the contract is successfully completed. Fifth, once the contract is completed and the services provided, the client must never again seek out the actress or initiate any form of contact with her. Haled notices, as he reads, that the part specifying how long the performance will last hasn't been filled in. But Lacy, realizing he's reached that section, explains that they hadn't defined that yet, which is why she was waiting for him to return and add the duration. She thinks the time frame should be a maximum of 2 years, because anything beyond that will make things much more difficult for her later on, and things could get complicated. Trying to change the subject, Haled asks why there's no clause about what happens if she fails to play her role. Lacy, confident, replies that there isn't one because she knows she won't fail. But Haled just looks at her suspiciously. She then adds a clause stating that if she fails as an actress, meaning if she fails to meet the terms of the contract, the client will have the right to be compensated in whatever way he desires, meaning she'll do anything he wants. Haled blushes at the thought of Lacy doing whatever he wants. Suddenly, Lacy slaps the contract against the table and stands up, saying, all right, so the terms are set, right? 2 years of contract, because as I said, anything longer than that and the chances of trouble increase a lot, like the problems I had when I played Veronica. Besides, how can I be your fiancé for more than 2 years without us having an heir? People will start to get suspicious. Haled turns bright red at the thought of having children with Lacy, which makes him cough nervously. Noticing this, Lacy asks if something's wrong. He awkwardly says no, but she gets straight to the point, saying she knows that sleeping together will be inevitable since they're entering a contract marriage. And since they're on the topic, she needs him to obtain some kind of magical contraceptive item. I want you to keep in mind that I don't intend to have any intimacy without protection. Your Highness, are you listening to me? Lacy says matter-of-factly. Excited by the idea of getting more intimate with Lacy, Haled lifts her into his arms, stating that he agrees with the terms and that now would be a great time to do what married couples do. Lacy finally gets flustered. She asks him to wait a moment since they still need to sign the contract. But Haled lays her on the bed and, looking into her eyes, says, "Do whatever you want with the contract, because I'm going to do whatever I want with you from now on." But to Haled's disappointment, Lacy seems to have had an extremely long day and ends up falling asleep before anything more interesting can happen. Haled doesn't get upset or angry. On the contrary, he shows incredible understanding and tenderness. He watches her for a moment, then gently covers her so she'll be more comfortable. At that moment, she stirs in her sleep as if she's having a nightmare. But Haled gently kisses her forehead, trying to soothe her. The next day, we see Lana begging Simon to let her meet the consort princess. Lana is the twin sister of Luan, the guard who answered Lacy's questions the previous day. Simon denies Lana's request, informing her that she can meet the consort princess later, but not now. Lana throws a small tantrum while Luan, her brother, tries to calm her down. We learn from the gossip of other guards on the ship that despite the tantrum she's throwing now, Lana is a formidable warrior and earned major victories during the wars, which gained her Prince Haled's trust. Still sulking, Lana is dragged back to her quarters, and meanwhile, Luan apologizes to Simon for his sister's childish behavior. Simon tells him not to worry. Lana didn't do anything wrong. Luan insists on apologizing. He explains that even though they came from a humble village, they now serve the royal family and must behave accordingly. Placing a hand on Luan's shoulder, Simon reassures him that everything is fine. Both he and Lana are talented guards who were personally chosen by Prince Haled, and for that, they should be proud and walk with their heads held high. Luan smiles and nods at Simon. Meanwhile, in the couple's room, Haled asks Lacy if she enjoyed the bath. Lacy, who looks extremely comfortable in a luxurious bathrobe, tells him the bath was wonderful. Divine. The best bath she's ever had. The fact that Lacy is wearing 3 golden hoop bracelets on her left arm seems to catch Haled's attention. He blushes slightly and says he's glad she enjoyed the bath. The only strange thing during the bath was how the maids were acting a little oddly. Lacy recalls. Maybe it's because she doesn't speak the same language as the maids, but Lacy noticed that they seemed extremely happy to be helping her bathe. It was almost like they were worshiping her, especially when she tried to thank them for the service. The maids all got excited and started chatting animatedly among themselves. Lacy admits to Haled that now that she's thought about it, the maids were so happy and attentive that they didn't even find it strange that a consort princess showed up out of nowhere on the ship. Haled doesn't seem to understand Lacy's concern. He tells her that he asked the maids to give her the best treatment, so he hopes she liked it. But now that she's done with her bath, it's time for him to apologize. Lacy, confused, asks what he needs to apologize for. At that moment, Haled leans over Lacy seductively and says, "Apologize for saying I'd finish what I started last night." Almost kissing her, he suggests they continue from where they left off the night before. Lacy, embarrassed, reminds Haled that she said she wouldn't do anything without protection first. Gently taking Lacy's left arm and showing her the bracelets, Haled explains that she's already protected, especially since she's wearing 3 instead of just 1. Sure that she got the message, Haled kisses her and immediately begins to touch her. Still a bit confused and embarrassed, Lacy looks to the side and something catches her attention. A huge tiger sitting in one of the corners of the room. Frightened, she asks Haled what the hell that is. Haled calms Lacy and explains that it's a Teru, his guardian, and its name is Zeppi. Unlike Weldon, in the Empire of Arena, magic still exists, and people possess magical powers. When someone is able to properly control their powers, part of their mana takes the form of a guardian. They're called Teru. I'm the only one who can summon a Teru beyond the border. Don't worry about Zeppi. He won't hurt you. Now, shall we continue what we were doing? Or do you not want to? Haled says, teasing and touching Lacy again. Lacy's heart is racing. She wants Haled to continue. He makes her feel amazing. She never imagined that being held and kissed by someone could feel so wonderful. There's just one problem. She's a professional actress. Pretending to be in love with someone would be easy, but sex, that's complicated because she has no idea what to do. She's still a virgin. Lacy remembers how at the agency, Madame always emphasized to everyone that the job was acting. Giving your heart to someone to make the performance more convincing would always lead to dangerous problems. The ideal was to steal someone's heart, never give away your own. The memory brings Lacy back to her senses. This is dangerous, she thinks, as she stops Haled's advances. Trying to come up with an excuse to justify the refusal, Lacy repeats that she already said she wouldn't do anything without a magical contraceptive item. Haled shows Lacy the golden bracelets again. This time, he explains that they are magical contraceptive items, and wearing just one would be enough. In fact, He thought she was giving him a subtle hint when she said she was going to take a bath and came back wearing 3 of those bracelets. The moment Lacy hears Haled say that, she remembers the 3 maids putting the bracelets on her wrist and getting all excited. Now their excitement makes sense. Impatient, Haled picks Lacy up like a princess and starts carrying her toward the bed. Lacy, trying to pull herself together, makes Haled put her down. She tells him she's going to add a clause to the contract. No unnecessary sexual intimacy. She will act as his fiancée in public, but behind closed doors, she doesn't have to play that role. Haled is clearly unhappy with the new clause in the contract, but he ends up agreeing. Both of them sign the contract. Lacy then asks Haled to give her a name. He, confused, asks why a name. Clearly, she can't use the name Veronica anymore, but he imagined she would just use her real name. Lacy says her real name is a secret, because it's the only way she can protect herself. Neris, the name of the sea goddess would be perfect for you, says Haled, smiling at her. Lacy's heart starts racing again. Maybe because of Haled's charming smile, or maybe because she heard his voice saying her new name. Meanwhile, in the ship's dungeon, Simon and Luan are talking about the prisoner. Luan says she's finally calmed down. Simon assumes she was using some type of magic, considering she managed to hide for quite a long time. Luan confirms Simon's suspicions, but says they still haven't been able to identify what kind of magic she has. But he will interrogate the suspect until she tells them everything. With a serious look, Simon says the interrogation won't be necessary. After all, it'll be the end for her once they reach Arena, because he will strip her of her magic. With a distant expression, Luan comments that that would be even worse than death for her. As the two walk away from the prisoner's cell, the prisoner grabs the bars tightly, and then something begins to glow. The scene cuts to Prince Haled's quarters. Simon is formally introducing himself to Lacy, or rather, to Neris. He apologizes for taking so long to introduce himself. With a beautiful smile, Lacy says it's all right. After all, they've already seen each other. Remembering the steamy scene he witnessed, Simon composes himself and simply nods. Trying to be polite, she thanks Simon for his hard work and says she hopes to count on him in the future. Simon is extremely flattered by the consort princess's words. Haled interrupts the sweet moment between the two, reminding Simon that he was called there to check on Lacy's health. The fact that she hasn't been sleeping well might be a sign of something more serious, and that worries Haled. After asking her permission, Simon examines her in a rather unusual way and concludes that apparently there's nothing wrong with her health, but rather with her. Haled is relieved to hear this and leaves the room, telling them he needs to check on a few things on the ship. Lacy takes the opportunity to ask Simon what the prince told him about her. Simon replies that the prince mentioned she was his fiancée, and as such would become the future queen of the Empire of Arena. In addition, he said he fell in love with her at first sight, that she was still getting used to the Arena language, and that her meals should always be prepared with only high-quality, nutritious ingredients. Curious, Lacy asks him why no one seems to be asking about her, since she boarded the ship as a stowaway. Simon explains that the guard who saw her board doesn't remember her face, and in general, the guards have a hard time understanding Weldon's language. They also know nothing about what happens in Weldon, so there's no way they could know about the wanted poster. At that moment, Lacy realizes Simon knows much more than he just told her. He definitely knows about Veronica, and since he seems fluent in the Weldon language, he must have heard all the outrageous things she said to Prince Haled when she was playing Veronica. Realizing this, she asks Simon if he's really okay with her being in the position she's in, since he knows everything. Bowing to the consort princess, Simon assures her that it's all right, and he shows the sincerity of his words through his actions. Lacy smiles at Simon, thanking him again, which makes him blush from her kindness. Looking at the shine of the golden bracelets on her wrist, Lacy asks Simon about them, if it's common for people to wear them in Arena. Simon explains that the bracelets are quite rare and unusual to wear, as they were made especially for Prince Haled. Only he, and now she, wears that bracelet. Upon hearing this, a small twinge of jealousy stings Lacy's heart, and she wonders, does he use this bracelet to get intimate with other people? Unaware of Lacy's expression, Simon continues talking about the prince. Prince Haled descends from the Hartman family, the royal family of the Empire of Arena. He is the most qualified to become heir to the throne, skilled both in combat and strategy as well as intelligent. And his looks and beauty are such that women fall hopelessly in love with him all the time. Despite that, His Highness has never been involved in any romantic scandals. He also has no fiancées and doesn't accept concubines. Practically perfection in the form of a prince. Even with all that praise, Lacy keeps thinking that Haled invites random women to be intimate, and that leaves her sulking. Simon, noticing Lacy's upset and thoughtful expression, wonders if he said something wrong. Lacy realizes that Haled must be very loved in the Empire of Arena, which could be bad for her. People might get suspicious when suddenly a consort princess appears out of nowhere. Simon reassures Lacy, saying that people might be surprised, but they won't think anything bad. Neither about her nor about Prince Haled, because no woman has ever been able to capture His Majesty's heart. Haled returns. Seeing that Simon and Lacy are chatting so cheerfully, he looks at Simon with suspicion, as if he might have said too much. He orders Simon to leave since he's finished what he needed to do. He seems a bit irritated. At first, Lacy thinks maybe he's jealous of her with Simon, but she decides to ask if everything's okay on the ship, since he left in such a hurry earlier. Haled replies that everything is under control. But at that moment, the scene cuts to the ship's dungeon, where Luan reports to Haled that the prisoner has escaped. Several guards were injured when she broke free. She must still be on the ship. She'll try to attack you, Your Majesty, says Luan, concerned. Haled suspects she had an ally on board who helped her escape. Luan questions why she must be kept alive until they reach Arena, since she's clearly more dangerous than they imagined. Holding firm to his principles, Haled reminds Luan that his convictions on how to handle prisoners remain the same, regardless of the threat they pose. We return to the present. Lacy notices Haled deep in thought and asks if he's sure everything is all right. He smiles, assuring her that everything's taken care of, and there's nothing she should worry about. Noticing the papers near Lacy, he compliments her for dedicating herself to learning more about Arena. Proudly, Lacy brags about being committed to her work. Who knows? If I do well enough, maybe my dear client will give me a bonus, she says with a charming smile. She moves closer to him and, looking into his eyes, reminds him that he promised her everything she wanted. In response to her comment, Haled asks what she truly desires. Lacy pulls back, thoughtful, without saying a word. But deep down, she knows what she wants. Freedom. She's always been trapped in some way. Being free is her greatest wish. She begins to imagine a future where she's free of debt, poverty, and the agency's grip. She reaches her hand out happily towards someone. Haled. His hand touches hers. She snaps out of her daydream, startled by what she was just thinking. Is she letting her emotions take over? Haled, still waiting for an answer, looks at her, confused. Snapping back into character, Lacy replies that what she wants most is money. Haled looks at her with disapproval. On the ship's deck, Simon and Luan gossip about Lacy. They're impressed by the purity of the mana she radiates. Her presence is truly striking, almost as strong and pure as that of a priest. Even her words seem to carry magic within them. Simon reflects on how he sees Lacy in his mind while speaking with Luan. Luan is excited to see Lacy's true potential once they finally cross the border. Apparently, the ban they mention restricts magic within the Kingdom of Weldon. They're not even allowed to speak about it. After meeting her, Simon seems to understand why the prince was so determined to find her again. Her power seems so great that she may possess purification abilities. Luan says goodbye to Simon as he heads off for his patrol. Simon remains there on the deck, thoughtful, worried about whether Lacy will be all right. She seems amazing, but jumped headfirst into this without truly knowing what she was getting into. I just hope the prince keeps a good relationship with the consort princess until he can explain everything to her, says Simon aloud, thinking. Haled approaches Simon and apologizes for making his concerns a reality. He fears he may have ended up ruining everything with Lacy. Explaining what he means, Haled tells Simon that he and Lacy had a small disagreement. He got irritated and offended by how shallow she seemed, only wanting money. He knows that's not really all she thinks about, and he tried to get her to tell him the truth, but she just kept getting more and more upset with him, which only makes things even more complicated. For him. Now alone in the room, Lacy thinks about freedom. She's always wished for it with all her strength, but never really thought about what to do once she actually achieved it. Maybe it's because she's so used to having everything decided for her. But for a brief moment, Haled came to her mind when she thought about being free. He's the one giving her one more chance to truly be free. With a warm and calm gaze as he called her name, for a moment she wished none of it was just a contract. But love isn't something included in the contract they signed. Especially not when the man in question is someone so important to an empire. Someone who needs several contraceptive bracelets. Roar. Lacy's thoughts are interrupted by Zeppi's roar, who had been in the room the entire time and is now stretching while adjusting his position on his comfy bed. Frightened by how gigantic Zeppi is, she complains that she can't get a single minute of peace on this trip. Zeppi starts walking toward Lacy, which terrifies her even more. She trembles in fear, wishing he would back off. Haled returns just in time, and Lacy is relieved to see him. He says it seems she and Zeppy are getting used to each other. But Lacy only complains about how long he took and how he could possibly leave her alone with such a huge beast. Smiling with relief, Haled concludes that Lacy seems to be feeling better. Because when he left the room, she looked very upset and sad about something. Haled looks sternly at Zeppy, who gets the message and leaves the room. He then kneels in front of Lacy and says he needs her to do something. It's time to earn approval. Soon they'll be entering the waters of the Empire of Arena, and because of that, he needs her to stay by his side while they perform the ritual in honor of the divine commander of the sea. If they fail, they may end up facing storms and rough weather. Or worse, the ship could sink. While the maids dress Lacy in a beautiful black gown and expensive accessories, she can't help but be impressed by how superstitious the people of Arena seem to be. Haled returns to the room to check that Lacy is all right. Of course I'm fine. You said I just have to stand by your side. Haled approaches her and gently touches her hair. Lacy becomes flustered. He's going to kiss me? He's really going to kiss me in front of the maids. She closes her eyes, blushing with anticipation. But Haled simply adjusts the necklace around her neck. He reassures her that it's normal to feel anxious about meeting the ruler of the sea. And then he leaves to prepare the final details of the ceremony. "See you later," says Lacy, relieved. What the hell was I thinking he was going to do? I need to stop letting emotions take over and focus on the job. Outside, Simon tells His Majesty that he's concerned about the consort princess. She might be shocked by the ritual. With a confident smile, Haled believes some things are better experienced firsthand. Beautifully dressed, Lacy walks to the ship's deck. As she enjoys the fresh air and the sea breeze, she hears a sound she doesn't quite recognize. Turning toward the sound, she sees several people bowing in reverence to her. Impressed by the crew's reaction, she seems to finally understand what Simon told her the other day about how the people of Arena would react to her. A green-haired girl accompanying them nods approvingly to Lacy, who understands the signal and begins to walk confidently toward the ceremony site. As she passes the people, they begin to rise to their feet. Lacy feels a bit intimidated by it all. If she had stood still in front of those people, they might still be bowing. She's standing near the edge of the deck, gazing out at the sea, when one of her maids approaches and drapes a cape over her shoulders. Though the cape is thin and light, it seems to warm her well. Lacy notices an unusual glow in one of the gems that fastens the cape. And then she realizes that, just like the bracelets, the cape is also a magical item. She hears something approaching. Turning around, she sees Zeppy coming closer and walking alongside her. At first, she wants to hide, but she can't. She's in public and must act like Prince Haled's fiancée, future Queen of Arena. She then tries to ignore Zeppy and maintain her noble posture. It works because people start commenting about her and Zeppy. How incredible it is that he approached her on his own, and how he acts adorably only around her. No wonder she's the consort princess. Once again, the sound of people bowing to someone plays like music in Lacy's ears. She looks relieved toward Haled, who has just stepped onto the deck. He looks as stunning as always, but this time in black attire that matches hers. As Haled approaches Lacy, people comment on how amazing they look together.